Hi everybody, this is going to be your notes today. You'll get a book assignment at the end of this video. So, the sine shows what happens to the blank coordinate. So, when we were talking about sine and cosine on the axes, your sine was the y value, okay? Y over r, and that's what we are going to do. It hasn't changed. Okay, so if we look at a unit circle, that's your circle that we've been working with, and we have here and here. This, when we start there, your sine starts, the y value starts at 0. It goes to 1 up here, then it goes to 0, and then it goes to -1, and then to 0. And that's how we are going to graph down here. But we will just wait for a little bit. Now my cosine is my x value. So my x value starts at 1 here, then goes to 0, then -1, then 0, then 1. Okay? Your period, so it's all the way around, will be 2 pi. And your amplitude is 1 because that's how high the unit circle goes. Okay? We'll have 5 critical points for each cycle. Okay? The start, at the axis, and the end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we start with here, 2, 3, 4, and then we start back there. Okay? So that's how we end. We start and end right there. So, whoops. Let's graph sine. Our period is going to be 2 pi, and our amplitude is 1. So if we look, okay, just kidding. All right, here we go. And our scale, so you're going to take your period and divide it by 4, because we have 4 sections. 5 points in 4 sections. So that's going to be pi over 2. So there's my graph. It looks kind of like a sideways T-chart. So here's my 1, here's my -1, and my 0. And then I have 4 points, okay? Pi over 2, and then then we have pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And remember, we always start at 0, so those are my 5 points. Is here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you always have 5 critical points. So now when we're talking about sine, it is our y value. So our y value starts, when it's at 0, it starts at 0. And then it goes to 1, pi, -1, 0. Whoops. So there's my sine graph. Now, just to make sure, let's talk about it with our unit circle so it makes sense. We're talking about our y value, okay? At 0, our y value is 0 because it's 1, 0, okay? Our y value is 0. Here we have 0, 1. So at pi over 2, our y value is at 1. Our pi, we have -1, 0. Our y value is at 0. At 3 pi over 2, it's going to be 0, -1. So our y value is at -1. And then we end at 2 pi, which is it's 0 again. Okay? All right, so that's sine. Now let's talk about cosine. So our period is still 2 pi, amplitude 1. Our scale, you take your, whoops, okay, 2 pi, 1, we take our 2 pi divided by 4, which is pi over 2. So my amplitude is 1 and negative 1. And then I have my pi over 2, my pi, my 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So now let's talk about our x value, because that's our cosine, is our x value. Our x value starts at 1 when it's at 0. Then, at pi over 2, we have 0, 1, so we go to 0. At pi, negative 1, 0, so our x value is negative 1. We have our 3 pi over 2, 0, negative 1, so our y value is at 0. And then if we go back around, 2 pi is at 1. So now, there is my cosine graph. So, there's how we graph sine and cosine. That is our normal cosine and sine. Sine always starts at 0. Okay. That's your sine. Our cosine always starts at 1. That's our normal cosine and cosine graph. Now, let's talk about different period and different amplitude. Okay. So, when there's a 1/2 in front, that is going to change your amplitude. So, my amplitude is now 1/2, and my amplitude is 3. Remember, our amplitude is always positive because we're talking about length, height. My period is still 2 pi on both of those. Okay, kind of showing you the difference between our scale. You take 2 pi, divide by 4, so we still get pi over 2. Still get pi over 2. So now sine. Remember sine. We need to go 1/2 and negative 1/2 though, because our amplitude changes. This is our 0. Sine starts at 0. Let's do our scale here. Pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. So now, starts at 0 and goes up. So it goes up to 1/2, down to 0, down to negative 1, to 0. So there is my graph. Now, here's my cosine. We want to go up to 3 now, and down to negative 3. Pi over 2 and 2 pi. So now we want cosine always starts up, but we have a negative 3. So if it's negative, that means we have to start down. I'll do a different color here. So we have to start below instead of up high. 0, 3, 0, negative 3. So there's my cosine graph when it's negative 3 cosine of x. So there's my two sine and cosine graphs. Sine, if sine was a negative in front, it would go down like this instead of going up first. So that's the difference. If sine is negative, it goes down. If cosine is negative, it starts down. Okay? All right, so your assignment is going to be page 778, 13 through 20. All right, good luck. I'll answer all your questions on Monday.